All right, so here we are with chapter 7. I'm going to make this rather quick, so you're going to want to do some looking over the chapter yourself. Um, I made mention of this in class, but some of you, most of you actually weren't in class. Um, but there are some of you who are never in class because you're taking the course online, which is fine. But anyway, um, what I was going to say is the sections in your textbook that are they have like a green background with like gray text to them. You really want to pay attention to those parts. Those are direct quotations from various Supreme Court cases, and they're going to be very important to your study and to any potential test questions that might come up. So, with that, let's talk about arrests very quickly. This is going to be a very cursory overview of Chapter 7. Okay, so arrests can come in one of two forms. They can come in a formal arrest, or they can come in the form of a seizure tantamount to an arrest. Um, and we'll talk about the seizures here in a second, but with a formal arrest, it has to be an intentional act. So it has to be something where the officer did it on purpose. It has to be an exercise of the officer's real or pretended authority. Um, so, um, there has to be some manner of authority going on there. You the arrest may occur by the person being physically taken into custody through physical force or by submission to the arrest. So there have been times, here where I say submission to the arrest. A lot of times, folks don't understand what that means because we don't hardly ever see it in TV. But the submission to the arrest is very simply whenever I say, "Hey, John Law or John Public, you're under arrest." All right, and they go and get into the back seat of my car themselves. I've actually had that happen. I've done that several times. More often than not, though, the way that a submission will take place is if for some reason, maybe to separate the parties on a domestic or something, I've placed one of them in the back seat of my patrol car, not in handcuffs. I just put them back there to keep them warm, to keep them safe, or something. And then I developed probable cause for their arrest. I'll tell them, "Hey, you're under arrest," and they're like, "Oh, okay," and we move on without putting them into handcuffs or anything like that. But there have been times, um, somebody does something, they know that they did it, they know that we're going to come for them, and rather than having some epic uh, standoff and gun battle, as soon as they see us roll up, then they're like, "Oh, yeah, they're here for me," and so then they just come right on out, get into the back seat of the patrol car. I don't even have to tell them that they're under arrest. They know exactly what's going on, and we do that. Okay, so then we have seizures that are tantamount to with the understanding of both. That's going to be that both the officer and the person arrested understand that an arrest has taken place. Um, okay, so with seizures tantamount to an arrest, this would be an instance where, say, something has happened and I come to your house and ask you to come to the police station for questioning, and I offer you a ride in my shiny black and white patrol car, and I take you in behind several locked doors, and you're not allowed to roam about my building freely. Clearly, an arrest has taken place there, whether submission to arrest or physical force or whatnot has occurred. And of course, if at the end of that interview I decide to release you, then it would be an unarrest. But for the purposes of legality, that would be tantamount to an arrest. Okay, so we have various authority for arrests. Obviously, we can arrest pursuant to a warrant. We can arrest without a warrant, and then there are citizens' arrests. So with the issuance of warrants, these are, sometimes you get a affidavit or a complaint, where basically somebody has provided a sworn statement that develops probable cause to believe that somebody committed a crime, and the magistrate will issue an arrest warrant. Additionally, there are times where the magistrate may issue a summons instead of an arrest warrant. And we talked about these earlier in the semester, but basically the difference is that a summons is the judge ordering you to court on a particular day to answer for the crime that you're charged with, where the arrest warrant is a court order commanding law enforcement to take you into custody and bring you before the court. And then warrantless arrests are whenever an officer develops probable cause on their own and brings somebody in custody, and then a warrant is issued later, or an indictment is issued later, or they make a first appearance before the court, something like that. But we can do either one. Interesting to note, though, with in Kansas, our arrest statutes say that we can arrest for a felony pretty much anytime, anywhere, however we want to, as long as we got probable cause on it. But it's limited for misdemeanors, and then it is further limited for misdemeanors being charged through a court of limited jurisdiction. And then, of course, we have citizens' arrests, which are whenever a citizen develops probable cause to believe that a crime has occurred, then they can take somebody into custody and detain them until law enforcement arrives to take the person into the jail. So it is whenever we make an arrest, it is not necessary for me to actually tell you, hey, Joe Q. Public, you are under arrest. It obviously makes my life immensely easier if I do, and it also helps me in establishing charges for like obstruction or resisting arrest. If I make that statement, police department, you're under arrest, but it's not necessary. Arrests, contrary to popular urban legend, arrests may take place any time of the day or night, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, except leap years where there's 366, so on and so forth. Now, here's one that you probably did not know. And there is case law in your textbook on this, so I highly recommend that you check out those green sections. But entry into dwellings is limited to consent or search warrants, and here's the biggie, or felony arrest warrants at the named defendant's residence, and the named defendant is inside the residence. So if I go to Joe Q. Public's house with a felony arrest warrant for Joe Q. Public, and I know that I can demonstrate that Joe Q. Public is inside his house, if he refuses to open the door, I can force entry into the residence and go and get him out. Interesting case law there for you. And then, of course, understanding your discretion there. Just because you can do a thing does not necessarily mean that you should. So just because you can kick in the door to Joe Q. Public's house doesn't mean that you should. So we also have search incident to arrest here, which we'll talk about a little bit further down the road, but it should be basically limited to the person and should be contemporaneous to a custodial arrest. So a very cursory overview there for you.